Greetings, one and all, once again, back to Exploring Arda, a Tolkien-centered podcast where I'm your host, Jackson, and I'll be going through a bunch of Tolkien's works other than Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And yeah, so this one we just barely started with Beren and Lúthien, and if you go back to my first episode of this, I won't be reading from the book Beren and Lúthien just yet, because right now I'm reading from this copy of the Silmarillion, which is also a really fantastic artwork here. It's incredible. But I'm reading first basically the story of Beren and Lúthien from the book first, and then I'm going to go back to the actual book Beren and Lúthien, and I'll be reading through what's called the Lay of Lúthien, which is, Lúthien. I think that's how it's pronounced. And it's basically like the poetry form of the story, and it's like considered the original work of Beren and Lúthien. So if all of you who have been reading and listening, I guess, to Beren and Lúthien, basically, yeah, it's a poetry story first, and then it was translated into the story. So that's kind of what we're doing here with Beren and Lúthien, because it's one of my favorite stories of the Silmarillion. And yeah, this is going to be part 2 here, and there'll be 3 parts to the Silmarillion aspect, but then when it comes to the poetry one, it'll be a little different. So we'll be going right here into the story here with part 2 of Beren and Lúthien. So here we go. And actually, from the last time, since there really isn't any chapters, Beren right now was captured by Sauron. And Sauron, is one of like the biggest lieutenants of Morgoth during the war. So of course he gets captured by Morgoth, him and his men here. I think they are on the island right now because it's been a while since I last read. Basically, Felagund is the one who was basically going against Sauron with songs and stuff like that, because in Tolkien's Middle-earth, the form of songs and music is actually very powerful. And it's a really cool thing to really think about. But we'll save that for another episode because we're going into stories. So let's get into it after a long intro. In the time when Sauron cast Beren into the pit, a weight of horror came upon Lúthien's heart. And going to Melian for counsel, she learned that Beren lay in the dungeons of Tol-in-Gaurhoth, without hope of rescue. Then Lúthien, perceiving that no help would come from any other on earth, resolved to fly from Doriath and come herself to him. But she sought the aid of Daeron, and he betrayed her purpose to the king. Then Thingol was filled with fear and wonder, and because he would not deprive Lúthien of the lights of heaven, lest she fail and fade, and yet would restrain her, he caused a house to be built from which she could not escape. Not far from the gates of Menegroth stood the greatest of all the trees in the forest of Neldoreth, and that was a beech forest, and on the northern half of the kingdom. This mighty beech was named Hirelorn, and it had 3 trunks, equal in girth, smooth and rind, and exceedingly tall. No branches grew from them for a great height above the ground. Far aloft between the shafts of Hirelorn a wooden house was built, and there Lúthien was made to dwell, and the ladders were taken away and guarded, save only when the servants of Thingol brought her such things as she needed. It is told in the Lay of Lúthien how she escaped from the house in Hirelorn, for she put forth her arts of enchantment and caused her hair to grow to great length, and of it she wove a dark robe that wrapped her beauty like a shadow, and it was laden with the spell of sleep. On the strings that remained she twined a rope, and she let it down from her window, and as the ends swayed above the guards that sat beneath the tree, they fell into a deep slumber. Then Lúthien climbed from her prison, and shrouded in her shadowy cloak, she escaped from all eyes, and vanished out of Doriath. It chanced that Celegorm and Curufin went on a hunt through the guarded plain, and this they did because Sauron, being filled with suspicion, sent forth many wolves into the elf-lands. Therefore they took their hounds and rode forth, and they thought that ere they returned, they might also hear tidings concerning King Felagund. Now the chief of the wolf-hounds that followed Celegorm was named Huan. He was not born in Middle-earth, but came from the Blessed Realm, where Orome had given him to Celegorm long ago in Valinor, and there he had followed the horn of his master, before evil came. Huan followed Celegorm into exile, and was faithful, and thus he too came under the doom of woe set upon the Noldor, and it was decreed that he should meet death, but not until he encountered the mightiest wolf that would ever walk the world. Huan it was that found Lúthien flying like a shadow, surprised by the daylight under the trees, when Celegorm and Curufin rested a while near to the eastern eaves of Doriath. For nothing could escape the sight and scent of Huan, nor could any enchantment stay him, and he slept not, neither by night or day. He brought her to Celegorm, and Lúthien, learning that he was a prince of the Noldor and a foe of Morgoth, was glad. And she declared herself, casting aside her cloak. So great was her sudden beauty revealed beneath the sun that Celegorm became enamored of her. But he spoke her fair, there you go, and promised that she would find her help in her need, if she returned with him now to Nargothrond. By no sign did he reveal that he knew already of Beren and the quest, of which he told, nor that it was a matter which touched him near. Thus they broke off the hunt and returned to Nargothrond, and Lúthien was betrayed, for they held her fast and took away her cloak, and she was not permitted to pass the gate or to speak with any save the brothers Celegorm and Curufin. For now, believing that Beren and Felagund were prisoners beyond hope of aid, they purposed to let the king perish and to keep Lúthien, and force Thingol to give her hand to Celegorm. Thus they would advance their power and become the mightiest of the princes of the Noldor, and they did not purpose to seek the Silmarils by craft or war, or to suffer any others to do so, until they had all the might of the elf kingdoms under their hands. Orodreth had no power to withstand them, for they swayed the hearts of the people of Nargothrond, and Celegorm sent messengers to Thingol urging his suit. But Huan the Hound was true of heart, and the love of Lúthien had fallen upon him in the first hour of their meeting, and he grieved at her captivity. Therefore he came often to her chamber, and at night he lay before her door, for he felt that evil had come to Nargothrond. Lúthien spoke often to Huan in her loneliness, telling of Beren, who was the friend of all birds and beasts that did not serve Morgoth. And Huan understood all that was said, for he comprehended the speech of all things with voice, but it was permitted to him thrice only ere his death to speak with words. We'll do a little bit of a quick break here. This is actually a really cool thing that Tolkien included with Beren and Lúthien. It's basically the story of Rapunzel with the let down your hair, kind of thing. But this is Lúthien's, version of it, where she basically put an enchantment on herself. And I think that's really cool too, because I think, like, for the most part, with a lot of magical stories, you hear a lot of, enchanters putting spells on somebody else, which Lúthien does put a spell on, like, the guards beneath the trees, but, like, she puts it on herself first. So I think that's a really cool part of the story. But basically, yeah, King Thingol literally builds this big, massive tree house, takes down the ladders and everything, but she still escapes because she's just that powerful. Or I guess you could say magical. She's not really, like, power, but her magic is very potent, so... she basically runs away. She gets found by Celegorm and Curufin, and they basically want to keep her. Instead of, turning her over to Thingol, they basically just want her as, like, I think it was, Celegorm. I forget which one it was. But basically, Celegorm, there you go. Celegorm wants to basically marry Lúthien, but Lúthien obviously does not want that. So, and Huan, we get introduced to Huan. He is the best... the best wolf, basically, of all Middle-earth. He plays a big part in this, so it's really great to see Huan in the story again, because he's very cool. And you'll see later, he does a lot more things. So, let's get back into it. Now, Huan devised a plan for the aid of Lúthien, and coming at time of night, he brought her cloak, and for the first time he spoke, giving her counsel. Then he led her by secret ways out of Nargothrond, and they fled together north. And he humbled his pride, and offered her to ride upon him in the fashion of a steed, even as the orcs did at time upon great wolves. Thus they made great speed, for Huan was swift and tireless. In the pits of Sauron, Beren and Felagund lay, and all their companions were now dead. But Sauron purposed to keep Felagund to the last, for he perceived that he was a Noldor of great might and wisdom, and he deemed that in him lay the secret of their errand. But when the wolf came for Beren, Felagund put forth all his power and burst his bonds, and he wrestled with the werewolf, and slew it with hands and teeth, yet he himself was wounded to the death. Then he spoke to Beren, saying, I go now to my long rest in the timeless halls beyond the seas and the mountains of Aman. It will be long ere I am seen again among the Noldor again, and it may be that we shall not meet a second time in death or life, for the fates of our kindreds are apart. Farewell. He died then in the dark, in Tol-in-Gaurhoth, whose great tower he himself had built. Thus King Finrod Felagund, fairest and most beloved of the house of Finwë, redeemed his oath, but Beren mourned beside him in despair. In that hour Lúthien came, and standing upon the bridge that led to Sauron's isle, she sang a song that no walls of stone can hinder. Beren heard, and he thought that he dreamed, for the stars shone above him, and in the trees nightingales were singing. And in answer he sang a song of challenge that he had made in praise of the 7 stars, the sickle of the Valar that Farda hung above the north, as a sign for the fall of Morgoth. Then all strength left him, and he fell down into darkness. But Lúthien heard his answering voice, and she sang then a song of greater power. The wolves howled, and the isle trembled. Sauron stood in the high tower, wrapped in his black thought, but he smiled hearing her voice, for he knew that it was the daughter of Melian. The fame of the beauty of Lúthien and the wonder of her song had long gone forth from Doriath, and he thought to make her captive and hand her over to the power of Morgoth, for his reward would be great. Therefore he sent a wolf to the bridge, but Huan slew it silently. Still Sauron sent others one by one, and one by one Huan took them by the throat and slew them. Then Sauron sent Draugluin, a dread beast, old and evil, lord and sire of the werewolves of Angband. His might was great, and the battle of Huan and Draugluin was long and fierce. Yet at length Draugluin escaped, and fleeing back into the tower, he died before Sauron's feet, and as he died he told his master, "Huan is there." Now Sauron knew well, as did all in that land, the fate that was decreed for the Hound of Valinor, and it came into his thought that he himself would accomplish it. Therefore he took upon himself the form of a werewolf, and made himself the mightiest that had yet walked the world, and he came forth to win the passage of the bridge. So great was the horror of his approach that Huan leapt aside. Then Sauron sprang upon Lúthien, and she swooned before the menace of the fell spirit in his eyes, and the foul vapor of his breath. But even as he came, falling, she cast a fold of her dark cloak before his eyes, and he stumbled, for a fleeting drowsiness came upon him. Then Huan sprang. There befell the battle of Huan and wolf Sauron, and the howls and baying echoed in the hills, and the watchers on the walls of arid Wethrin across the valley heard it from afar and were dismayed. But no wizardry nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art nor beast strength, could overthrow Huan of Valinor, and he took his foe by the throat and pinned him down. Then Sauron shifted shape, from wolf to serpent, and from monster to his own accustomed form, but he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Lúthien came to him, and said that he should be stripped of his raiment of flesh, and his ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth. And she said, "There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower." Then Sauron yielded himself, and Lúthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there, and Huan released him. And immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Tar-Nufuan, and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Then Lúthien stood upon the bridge and declared her power, and the spell was loosed that bound stone to stone, and the gates were thrown down, and the walls opened, and the pits laid bare, and many thralls and captives came forth in wonder and dismay, shielding their eyes against the pale moonlight, for they had lain long in the darkness of Sauron. But Beren came not. Therefore Huan and Lúthien sought him in the isle, and Lúthien found him mourning by Felagund. So deep was his anguish that he lay still, and he did not hear her feet. When thinking him already dead, she put her arms around him, and fell into a dark forgetfulness. But Beren, coming back to the light out of the pits of despair, lifted her up, and they looked again upon one another, and the day rising over the dark hills shone upon them. They buried the body of Felagund upon the hilltop of his own isle, and it was clean again. And the green grave of Finrod, Finarfin's son, fairest of all the princes of the elves, remained inviolate, until the land was changed and broken, and founded under destroying seas. But Finrod walks with Finarfin his father, beneath the trees in Eldamar. We're gonna do. We'll do one more break here, and we'll actually do a lengthy part of the story, and then we'll be done. So basically, there's this big, I guess you could say, battle between Huan and Wolf Sauron. I forgot that he was just named as Wolf Sauron. I forgot if he was just like named as Shapeshifter, which he obviously is, especially in the Silmarillion. which does make sense because I don't know, he's so powerful in like the darker magic that it would make sense for him to be a shapeshifter, but you don't really see a whole lot of that in Middle Earth. A lot of shapeshifters. You see, like, Beorn from like The Hobbit, but I think that's about it. So it's really cool to see that Sauron was once a shapeshifter, and obviously once he gets to Lord of the Rings, he's just basically his spiritual self, which does happen, like, I think twice, because like right here in Beren and Lúthien, he gets defeated by Huan, and then he basically gets cursed from Lúthien, basically to just, go away and never come back, that classic line. And he does. He just flees because he realizes that, okay, well, all right, he's actually not the biggest, most ferocious wolf of all of the earth, which is true because we get to see it later. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, yeah. The whole, going back to the whole theme of music and songs being very potent and strong in the Silmarillion, because Lúthien here, she basically just sings out some songs and there's like magical things that happen, and it's just such a cool trait that Lúthien has. Her strength relies in her voice. Well, yeah, her voice, her power comes from the songs, and then obviously her beauty, her image basically makes a lot of even the elves just like stand still. So it's really cool. But obviously, yeah, Sauron's defeated, and Beren is still weeping over Finrod's Felagund. But yeah, I do like the whole sentence of Finrod walks beneath the trees in Eldamar. It's very cool. I like that. So, but we're gonna go back into the story. We're gonna finish up what I have for this episode, and yeah, it'll be a fun time, I think. So here we go, back to the story. Now Beren and Lúthien to Nuviel went free again, and together walked through the woods, renewing for a time their joy. And though winter came, it hurt them not, for flowers lingered where Lúthien went, and the birds sang beneath the snow-clad hills. But Huan, being faithful, went back to Celegorm his master, yet their love was less than before. There was tumult in Nargothrond, for thither now returned many elves that had been prisoners in the Isle of Sauron, and a clamour arose that no words of Celegorm could still. They lamented bitterly the fall of Felagund their king, saying that a maiden had dared that which the sons of Feanor had not dared to do, but many perceived that it was treachery rather than fear that had guided Celegorm and Curufin. Therefore the hearts of the people of Nargothrond were released from their dominion and turned again to the house of Finarfin, and they obeyed Orodreth. But he would not suffer them to slay the brothers, as some desired, for the spilling of kindred blood by kin would bind the curse of Mandos more closely upon them all. Yet neither bread nor rest would he grant to Celegorm and Curufin within his realm, and he swore that there should be little love between Nargothrond and the sons of Feanor thereafter. Let it be so, said Celegorm, and there was a light of menace in his eyes, but Curufin smiled. Then they took horse and rode away like fire, to find, if they might, the kindred to the east. But none would go with them, not even those who were of their own people, for they all perceived that the curse lay heavily upon the brothers, and that evil followed them. In that time Celebrimbor, the son of Curufin, repudiated the deeds of his father, and remained in Nargothrond, yet Huan followed still the horse of Celegorm his master. Northward they rode, and for they intended in their haste to pass through Dimbar, and along the north marches of Doriath, seeking the swiftest road to Himring, where Maedhros their brother dwelt. And still they might hope with speed to traverse it, since it lay close to Doriath's borders, shunning Nan Dun-Gorthab, and the distant menace of the Mountains of Terror. Now it is told that Beren and Lúthien came in their wandering into the forest of Brethil, and drew near at last to the borders of Doriath. Then Beren took thought of his vow, and against his heart he resolved, when Lúthien was come again into the safety of her own land, to set forth once more. But she was not willing to be parted from him, saying, You must choose, Beren, between these two, to relinquish the quest and your oath, and seek a life of wandering upon the face of the earth, or to hold to your word and challenge the power of darkness upon its throne. But on either road I shall go with you, and our doom shall be alike. Even as they spoke together of these things, walking without heed in aught else, Celegorm and Curufin rode up, hastening through the forest, and the brothers espied them, and knew them from afar. Then Celegorm turned his horse, and spurred upon Beren, purposing to ride him down. But Curufin, swerving, stooped and lifted Lúthien to his saddle, for he was strong and cunning horseman. Then Beren sprang from before Celegorm, full upon the speeding horse of Curufin that had passed him, and the leap of Beren is renowned among men and elves. He took Curufin by the throat from behind and hurled him backwards, and they fell to the ground together. The horse reared and fell, but Lúthien was flung aside and lay upon the grass. Then Beren throttled Curufin, but death was near him, for Celegorm rode upon him with a spear. In that hour, Huan forsook the service of Celegorm and sprang upon him, so that his horse swerved aside and would not approach Beren because of the terror of the great hound. Celegorm cursed both hound and horse, but Huan was unmoved. Then Lúthien, rising, forbade the slaying of Curufin, but Beren despoiled him of his gear and weapons and took his knife, Angrist. That knife was made by Telchar of Nogrod, and hung sheathless by its side. Iron it would cleave as if it were green wood. Then Beren, lifting Curufin, flung him from him, and bade him walk now back to the noble kinsfolk, who might teach him to turn his valor to worthier use. Your horse, he said, I keep for the service of Lúthien, and I may be accounted happy to be free of such a master. Then Curufin cursed Beren under cloud and sky. Go hence, he said, unto a swift and bitter death. Celegorm took him beside him on his horse, and the brothers made then as if to ride away. But Beren turned away and took no heed of their words. But Curufin, being filled with shame and malice, took the bow of Celegorm and shot back as they went, and the arrow was aimed at Lúthien. Huan, leaping, caught it in his mouth, but Curufin shot again, and Beren sprang before Lúthien, and the dart smote him in the breast. It is told that Huan pursued the sons of Feanor, and they fled in fear, and returning he brought to Lúthien an herb out of the forest. With that leaf she staunched Beren's wounds, in her arts and by her love she healed him. And thus at last they returned to Doriath. There Beren, being torn between his oath and his love, and knowing Lúthien to be now safe, arose one morning before the sun, and committed her to the care of Huan. Then in great anguish he departed while she yet slept upon the grass. He rode northward again with all speed to the pass of Sirion, and coming to the skirts of Tar-Nufuan, he looked out across the waste of Anfaglith, and saw afar the peaks of Thangorodrim. There he dismissed the horse of Curufin, and bade it leave, now dread in servitude, and run free upon the green grass in the lands of Sirion. Then, being now alone and upon the threshold of the final peril, he made the song of parting, in praise of Lúthien and the lights of heaven, for he believed that he must now say farewell to both love and light. Of that song these words were part. Farewell, sweet earth and northern sky, forever blessed, since here did lie, and here with lissome limbs did run, beneath the moon, beneath the sun. Lúthien to Nuviel, more fair than mortal tongue can tell, though all to ruin fell the world, and were dissolved and backward hurled, unmade into the old abyss, yet were its making good for this, the dusk, the dawn, the earth, the sea, that Lúthien for a time should be. And he sang aloud, caring not what ear should overhear him, for he was desperate and looked for no escape. But Lúthien heard his song, and she sang in answer, as she came through the woods unlooked for. But Huan, consenting once more to be her steed, had borne her swiftly hard upon Beren's trail. Long he had pondered in his heart what counsel he would devise for the lightening of the peril of those two whom he loved. He turned aside therefore at Sauron's isle, as they ran northward again, and he took thence the ghastly wolf-hame of Drogluin, and the bat-fowl of Thuring-Wethel. She was the messenger of Sauron, and was wont to fly in vampire's form to Angband, and her great fingered wings were barbed at each joint's end with an iron claw. Clad in these dreadful garments, Huan and Lúthien ran through Tar-Nufuan, and all things fled before them. Beren, seeing their approach, was dismayed, and he wondered, for he had heard the voice of Tinuviel, and he thought it was now a phantom for his ensnaring. But they halted and cast aside their disguise, and Lúthien ran towards him. Thus Beren and Lúthien met again between the desert and the wood. For a while he was silent, and was glad, but after a space he strove once more to dissuade Lúthien from her journey. Thrice now I curse my oath to Thingol, he said, and I would that he had slain me in Menegroth, rather than I should bring you under the shadow of Morgoth. Then for the second time Huan spoke with words, and he counselled Beren, saying, From the shadow of death you can no longer save Lúthien, for by her love she is now subject to it. You can turn from your fate and lead her into exile, seeking peace in vain while your life lasts. But if you will not deny your doom, then either Lúthien, being forsaken, must assuredly die alone, or she must with you challenge the fate that lies before you. Hopeless, yet not certain. Further counsel I cannot give, nor may I go further on your road. But my heart forebodes that what you find at the gate I shall myself see. All else is dark to me, yet it may be that our 3 paths lead back to Doriath, and we may meet before the end." Then Beren perceived that Lúthien could not be divided from the doom that lay upon them both, and he sought no longer to dissuade her. By the counsel of Huan and the arts of Lúthien, he was arrayed now in the hame of Draugluin, and she in the winged fell of Thuringwethil. Beren came in all things like a werewolf to look upon, save that in his eyes there shone a spirit grim indeed, but clean, and horror was in his glance as he saw upon his flank a bat-like creature clinging with creased wings. Then howling under the moon, he leaped down the hill, and the bat wheeled and flittered above him. Actually, I'm going to do one break. I'm going to do one more break here, because I just want to highlight how super cool this is. This is like I think it's one of my favorite parts of Beren and Lúthien, is like after the defeat of Sauron, they basically like pass by Tarnufuan. Basically, they go past his isle and stuff. And basically, Huan takes the form of Draugluin, who basically he beat, which is really cool. Basically, you're just Huan basically takes the form of his former challenger, I guess, which is really cool. It's awesome, and it's a werewolf form. And then Lúthien takes the form of Thuringwethil, which is basically like another vampire in Sauron's servitude, which we don't really hear a lot of Thuringwethil, which is kind of a bummer because I would have really liked to see it, but yeah, this is, I think, like the most like gothic tale you could probably tell in fantasy, like in, I guess, Tolkien's fantasy. It's just so cool. I really love it. But yeah, but basically Lúthien's love for Beren basically is just returning every time that Beren tries to basically run away and be like, hey, no, you can't come with, because he's trying to save her, but she's like, no, I'm coming with. So then basically all 3 go in disguise, basically up to Angband. So it's very cool. I just wanted to highlight how cool, you know, this whole story is, and this is where it gets really awesome. So now it'll be the last break, and then I'll read the rest, and that'll be the end of the episode. So here we go, back to the story. They passed through all perils until they came with the dust of their long and weary road upon them to the drear dale that lay before the gate of Angband. Black chasms opened beside the road, whence forms as writhing serpents issued. On either hand the cliffs stood as embattled walls, and upon them sat carrion fowl crying with fell voices. Before them was the impregnable gate, an arch wide and dark at the foot of the mountain. Above it reared 1,000 feet of precipice. Their dismay took them, for at the gate was a guard of whom no tidings had yet gone forth. Rumor of he knew not what designs abroad among the princes of the elves had come to Morgoth, and ever down the aisles of the forest had heard the baying of Huan, the great Hound of War, whom long ago the Valar unleashed. Then Morgoth recalled the doom of Huan, and he chose from one among the whelps of the race of Draugluin, and he fed with his own hand upon living flesh and put his power upon him. Swiftly the wolf grew, until he could creep into no den, but lay huge and hungry before the feet of Morgoth. There the feet in anguish of hell entered into him, and he became filled with a devouring spirit, tormented, terrible, and strong. Carcharoth, the Red Maw, he is named in the tales of those days, and Anfaglir, the Jaws of Thirst. And Morgoth set him to lie unsleeping before the doors of Angband, lest Huan come. Now Carcharoth espied them from afar, and he was filled with doubt, for news had long been brought to Angband that Draugluin was dead. Therefore when they approached he denied them entry, and bade them stand, and he drew near with menace, scenting something strange in the air about them. But suddenly some power, descended from of old from divine race, possessed Lúthien, and casting back her foul raiment she stood forth, small before the might of Carcharoth, but radiant and terrible. Lifting up her hand she commanded him to sleep, saying, "O woe-begotten spirit, fall now into dark oblivion, and forget for a while the dreadful doom of life." And Carcharoth was felled as though lightning had smitten him. Then Beren and Lúthien went through the gate, and down the labyrinthine stairs, and together wrought the greatest deed that has been dared by elves or men. For they came to the seat of Morgoth in his nethermost hall, that was upheld by horror, lit by fire, and filled with weapons of death and torment. There Beren slunk in wolf's form beneath his throne, But Lúthien was stripped of her disguise by the will of Morgoth, and he bent his gaze upon her. She was not daunted by his eyes, and she named her own name, and offered her service to sing before him after the manner of a minstrel. Then Morgoth, looking upon her beauty, conceived in his thought an evil lust, and a design more dark than any had yet come into his heart since he fled from Valinor. Thus he was beguiled by his own malice, for he watched her, leaving her free for a while, and taking secret pleasure in his thought. Then suddenly she eluded his sight, and out of the shadows began a song of such surpassing loveliness, and of such blinding power, that he listened perforce, and a blindness came upon him, and his eyes roamed to and fro, seeking her. All his court were cast down in slumber, and all the fires faded and were quenched, but the Silmarils in the crown of Morgoth's head blazed forth suddenly with a radiance of white flame, and the burden of that crown and the jewels bowed down his head, as though the world was set upon it, laden with the weight of care, of fear, and of desire, that even the will of Morgoth could not support. Then Lúthien Then Lúthien, catching up her winged robes, sprang into the air, and her voice came dropping down like rain into pools, profound and dark. She cast her cloak before her eyes, and set upon him a dream, dark as the outer void where once he walked alone. Suddenly he fell as a hill sliding in an avalanche, and hurled like thunder from his throne, lay prone upon the floors of hell. The iron crown rolled echoing from his head. All things were still. As a dead beast, Beren lay upon the ground, but Lúthien, touching him with her hand, aroused him, and he cast aside the wolf-hame. Then he drew forth the knife Angrist, and from the iron claws that held it, he cut a Silmaril. And yeah, that's basically where I'm going to end the chapter, I guess you could say, the episode here. Again, that's what I'm saying. Lúthien's power, Lúthien's magic is just absolutely incredible. She's basically able to knock out Carcharoth first at the gate of Angband, because basically Carcharoth is like, something's weird going on here, because basically the death of Droglin basically was passed over all of Angband and Morgoth's lands, whatever. But yeah, she basically like goes right up to Carcharoth and says, "Sleep." Then Carcharoth just bang, like just falls down and sleep at the gate, and they basically go back into Angband, to Morgoth's lands as disguised. And then again, she basically sets forth her again more songs. That's what I'm saying. Like, Lúthien's magic is absolutely, I think it's absolutely divine, because that's what it basically says, from like divine. Descended of old from divine race, basically. So Lúthien's magic is basically just old ancient magic that is like as powerful as the Valar, which is crazy. Not as powerful, but close. But yeah, and then once Morgoth is sleeping, basically, Beren comes over with Angrist, the one he stole from I think it was Curufin, and yeah, basically from Angrist he cuts the Silmaril, and that's kind of where we're at in the story. So yeah, and there's more to come, but there's basically the good old chase scene right after this, and yeah, I just really enjoy the story. And basically ever since, I think, like from Sauron's Isle, so from like Tol-in-Gaurhoth on, that's like my favorite part of the Silmarillion, which is incredible. I think it's just because it's such an epic like tale that like you don't have to have too much knowledge of history, I guess, of the Silmarillion. Like, all you gotta know is Morgoth's the big bad guy, and Beren and Lúthien are against him. Because for them, that's kind of why I wanted to do Beren and Lúthien this year, because it's a good story that you can get behind. But it's really cool because they also say that it's like this task is something that neither the elves nor the men would dare to go. They're like, everybody's trying to overthrow Morgoth, and like, banish or vanquish him. There you go. Wow. Obviously they can't really like kill Morgoth because he's, literally an Ainur from the first times. But yeah, Beren and Lúthien, they just come over and be like, we just want one of the Silmarils. They don't even want to like tamper with him or injure him. They just want to take something. So I think that's what makes the difference between them two. Also because they want to do this for love. So but yeah, let me know your guys' favorite part of like this Beren and Lúthien story. So I'll be reading another part after this, and the story will be done. But then, like I said, I'll be going back to the actual book, Beren and Lúthien, which I do have back here. And I'll be reading the Lay of Lúthien, which is referenced many times in this Beren and Lúthien story. So, so with that being said and out of the way, that's basically all I have for that. So, stay tuned for another episode, and may the light of Elbereth be with you all. Farewell.